Welcome to City Life. I'm Beverly Thompson. When you visit American Tobacco, West Village, Brightleaf, or Durham Central Park, do you have a hard time finding parking? Well, if you answered yes, then you're like many of us who love these areas but dread trying to find on-street parking. Well, we have good news to share. Beginning in October 1st, new parking rules go into effect that should help you more easily find a coveted parking space. Here to talk about the new rules and why they're needed are Mark Ahrendsen and Thomas Leathers with the city's Transportation Department. Welcome to both of you, and thanks so much for joining me. So Mark, beginning October 1st, some big changes go into effect on how on-street parking is regulated. Tell our viewers what they can expect.
Mainly we're going to be focusing on time limits for on-street parking. Historically, we've been focused on limiting the on-street parking time limits in the downtown, the core of the downtown area, inside the downtown loop where historically most of the demand has been. But as we all know, the downtown's expanding. And the parking is spilling over into the streets around Brightleaf, West Village, Central Park, and American Tobacco. Those areas have not had time-regulated on-street parking, so we're expanding the 2-hour limits that currently exist within the downtown loop to those streets further out. These limits will be in effect from 8 a.m. in the morning until 6 p.m. in the evening, Monday through Friday, but they'll remain free during that time, and then they'll be unrestricted evenings and weekends.
So key word, free, but for 2 hours.
Free, but time limited for 2 hours during the day.
Okay, all right. So Thomas, give our viewers an idea of what streets will actually be affected by this.
With the new expanded enforcement and 2-hour on-street time limits, we are actually concentrating in the historic American Tobacco District. And in that district, we'll be focusing on Willard Street, Yancey, and Jackson, which are pretty much adjacent to the University of Ford complex there. Then we're going to be focusing on the Warehouse District, which includes Brightleaf and West Village. So those streets would be pretty much Morgan to Main, to Duke to Gregson. And there will be signage in all of these areas so that motorists would not be confused about which areas are enforced and which ones are not. And then finally, we're going to be in the Durham Central Park District, which will be Foster and Rixby, heading from Mangum down towards Corporation by the old Durham ballpark.
Okay. So who will be actually enforcing this? I mean, you don't see, well, evidently we do see some people out there sometimes, but who, will these same people be actually enforcing the parking?
Right. Our parking contractor, Lanier Parking Solutions, who manages our parking operations and our on-street enforcement currently, they will, assume the enforcement of these areas. As well, to help the public and our customers with locating which areas are enforced and which ones are not, we actually have developed a map that informs everyone about our existing parking areas that are currently enforced and those that will become effective on October 1st. So they can visit the city's website to view that map as well.
Is there a grace period or anything to give people a chance to learn just a little bit more about what to expect if they stay beyond the 2 hours?
Definitely. We try to be very customer friendly and customer focused. So we are allowing a 1-month grace period that will end on October the 31st to try to orientate and transition the parkers and the customers to our new enforcement criteria for those areas.
So will people get some kind of notice if they stay beyond the 2 hours?
Right. There, the Linear Parking Solution will issue warning tickets.
A warning ticket. Okay.
Issue a warning ticket with what type of violation it would be with the with the violation amount, because effective November the 1st, then they would know what the enforcement fine would be. Okay. When parking will be enforced.
So Mark, I know the parking system has undergone some pretty big changes over the last few months, most notably with the parking decks. The procedures and those decks have changed. What were those changes and why were they needed?
Well, for the parking decks, we've historically operated those decks and charged people from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And historically, after those hours, the gates where you enter and exit the decks have been raised. So the people that would perhaps arrive in the middle of the day but leave after the gates were up didn't pay. So we were actually losing some revenue from
see.
times that people were actually there during the times where we charged, but we weren't capturing that because they left after the gates went up. Back in May, starting effective June 1st, we installed new equipment, what's referred to as pay-in-lane equipment, so that now the gates stay down all the time. There's attendance at the gates up until 7 p.m., but after those hours, people will pay for the time that they were in the decks up until 7 o'clock, and the gates then will go up. One of the nice features, too, is that they accept credit cards. So if people are short of cash or don't have the right cash to get out, it will accept a credit card. But again, people are only paying for the time they were in these parking facilities between 8 in the morning and 7 p.m. in the evening, Monday through Friday. The parking remains free after those hours and on weekends.
What has been the feedback you've gotten?
Really, we haven't received too much feedback, have we, Thomas?
We have not from the downtown enforcement. We have not with those parking changes.
That's good to hear then.
There was some concern initially, and I think once people realized, well, it's still free after 7 p.m. for the evening activity and on the weekends, that seems to have been accepted.
Right.
What about 9th Street? I understand there were some changes there as well.
We did. We had a lot that the city, a small surface parking lot that the city has leased for almost over 25 years to help support the parking demands of the 9th Street businesses. Well, that property, that parking lot, the ownership of that parking lot changed hands fairly recently as part of some of the new development that you're seeing in the 9th Street area on the west side of 9th Street. And there was a possibility that parking actually may have been lost. And the merchants expressed some real concerns about that, and our own parking study demonstrated how important that relatively small parking lot was to serving the business needs in the 9th Street area. So the city did decide to continue the lease of that lot at a higher price than what it had been before, and to help recover part of the cost of that lease, implemented paid parking in that lot, where before this time it had been free. It's now similar rates, $1 per hour, between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, similar to what the charges are in the parking decks in the downtown area. That started June 1st. We also modified some of the on-street parking in the 9th Street area, similar to what you'll be seeing in the downtown. The streets around the 9th Street area have gone to 2-hour time-limited parking from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Is it too early to tell how successful that transition has been?
It probably is, because it took effect. You know, this is the 9th Street area is kind of a Duke-oriented to some extent. So it was implemented in the summer. There's construction activity going on. So there's a lot of different variables in play right now. I think it'll be a few months before we really get a fair assessment of how things are going in that area.
And Thomas, I know we talked a little bit about the comprehensive parking study, which recommended all of these changes. Tell us a little bit about that study, and if our viewers want to go and actually see the study or review the study, what should they do?
The study actually was a result of the city taking a look at our existing parking system and seeing and evaluating its effectiveness. It also examined some future development opportunities of development projects that we were aware of that were occurring in the downtown corridor and in 9th Street. So we wanted to engage our community stakeholders, such as Downtown Durham, Inc., some of the community and residents of downtown, the 9th Street Merchants Association, to take a good, candid look at the parking system and see what, if any, recommendations or any action that the city should take to ensure that we have a favorable parking experience for our customers. So I think we consulted with Kimberly Horn, who held various community meetings and conducted various surveys and did some type of land use analysis, and kind of evaluated the development opportunities that are happening in the city, and pretty much compiled a comprehensive report, not only for downtown but for the 9th Street corridor. And those reports, for anyone who may want to view them, are listed on the city's website that they can download and can monitor its progress. So that was pretty much the culmination of the report and some of the historical background of it and why it came to be. And since the City Council has adopted accepted the proposals, we have actively in transportation been implementing a lot of the recommendations that we are alluding to in this segment here.
Okay, all right. We've come to our break, but please stay with us for the second half of City Life as we take a closer look at the incredible amount of development happening in Durham and what it means for our parking system. We'll be right back.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Buzzed, busted, and broke, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
I've come up with the family emergency plan.
What is it?
It's difficult to talk about, so I'm not telling you.
I'm so glad I won't have to remember anything.
Me too. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
About half the coal-fired power plants across the nation were built more than 40 years ago and have never installed advanced pollution control technology. Right now, there are no national limits on how much mercury and other air toxics those facilities can put into the air. Pollutants from power plants can cause serious health problems like asthma attacks and heart attacks. That's why EPA has new mercury and air toxic standards to help protect our communities and our children's health and development by reducing power plant pollutants using widely available technology. Technology that can be made by American companies and installed by American workers. Our mercury and air toxic standards will save thousands of lives. It's an important advance for clean air and a healthier future for all Americans.
Welcome back to City Life. If you've been to downtown Durham or 9th Street lately, you've seen the incredible amount of construction taking place. From new hotels to new apartments and condos, Durham and the number of people who live, work, and visit here is rapidly growing. Joining me to talk about how all of those people will find parking are Mark Ahrendsen and Thomas Leathers. Thanks to you both for staying with me.
Thank you.
So Mark, the 2013 Comprehensive Parking Study incorporated the future growth and development of downtown and the 9th Street area. Anyone who's been to those areas lately can just see all of the growth taking place and know that parking might be an issue. What are we doing about this, and what does it mean for our parking system?
Well, I think that was the purpose of the parking study, was to try to get ahead of the curve. We've been fortunate from a parking perspective in the last couple decades that the decks that the city had constructed back in the 70s and the center deck in the late 80s, and then most recently the decks associated with American Tobacco, have been able to keep up with the demand. In fact, we don't have any problems meeting the current demand today. Nobody is turned away that is looking for a parking space in the decks or would like to lease a space. But as you alluded to, with all the activity that's going on, we don't expect that that will continue. So what we're trying to get an idea is, with this growth, what are these future parking demands going to be, and what do we need to be doing now to prepare for that when that demand actually comes.
So how will we change then to accommodate that growth? And are you experimenting with any new technologies or considering them?
We are. I think one of the things we're always looking to do is to make sure that we're using the limited space that we have as efficiently and effectively as possible. There certainly are opportunities for new technology to help us do that, to help direct motorists to where the parking spaces may be, so that they're not driving around looking for these limited spaces.
Okay, so I'm sure any changes that we consider come with a price tag. Is, of course, as something council members as well as the administration have to take into account. What is the status of any thoughts of that?
Well, that was one of the other things that the parking study looked at, is financially how do we sustain this parking operation over time to where it helps pay for itself. A couple things have come up. One of the things that, again, to this point, the parking on the street has been free. The parking rates in the decks are $1 an hour, 8 to 7 p.m. to meet the future demand, we expect that there's going to be a need for more off-street capacity. One of the things the parking study recommended was looking at opportunities for public-private partnerships. With this development that's coming, they're actually providing parking. If there are opportunities where we could partner and provide one parking facility that serves not only the needs of that particular development, but the general public as well, it's just a more cost-effective way to do that. So we continue to look at opportunities for these public-private partnerships as we move forward. And also, Durham is probably one of the last larger cities in North Carolina to not charge for on-street parking. We've been fortunate in not having had to do that. To help sustain the parking operation, that's something that we may need to look at in the future.
Okay. So Thomas, if our viewers want to find out any more about these changes or what other parking options exist, what should they do?
They could always visit the city's website.
Okay.
They can contact Lanier Parking Solutions, our parking contractor, and they can be reached at 919-680-2481.
Okay.
And for those individuals that park currently in the short-term parking that located on street that may want more long-term parking solutions, they can contact the American Tobacco campus and visit their website as well, because they have 3 garages there that have that can accommodate some of those parkers.
Okay. All right. Well, this one last question. Any thoughts either of you'd like to leave us with?
Well, let me mention a couple things, and I'll let Thomas add to that. We kind of alluded to this earlier. One of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're using our parking supply that we have today as efficiently and effectively as possible. So there's opportunities for technology improvements to help us do that. We'll continue to explore that. And one other thing that we kind of alluded to earlier was wayfinding. We may get into doing some more what's referred to as wayfinding signage to help direct motorists to where the available parking is located.
And there are apps to do that now, right?
There are.
There are.
Okay, and we're looking at those?
We are, to add to Mark's comments, we are looking at parking wayfinding for potentially the on-street and the off-street locations, where if customers are coming or visitors are visiting downtown or 9th Street, they can see where parking is available in any one of the city facilities. We're also looking at installing a pay-by-phone option where customers can extend their parking in like some of the surface lots, particularly 9th Street. If they are going to run over or they need to add time to the pay station, that they can do that remotely via their cell phones. We also have listened to public input and feedback regarding that parking may not be the easiest to find due to our parking brand and the signage that indicates people to go to the parking facilities. So we're also exploring and evaluating the current system and how signage is, if it's adequate or not, to appropriately direct people to the parking facilities as well.
Okay.
Beverly, could I add one other thing too? While we're focusing today on parking and how parking helps support the downtown, we are the transportation department, and I want to mention parking's not the only thing we do, and driving an automobile is not the only way to get downtown. One of the things we hope to do, and we actually are already seeing this, that more people are using other modes to travel downtown, whether it be by bus, maybe someday light rail service. We're seeing a lot more bicyclists that are actually residing in some of these apartments that you see going up around downtown. People are walking to work. So we're hopeful that the only way that people get downtown won't be by automobile, but there'll be other modes that they'll be traveling to downtown as well. But we'll still want to be able to take care of the cars when they get there.
I hear you, a lot of options there.
That's right.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
Well, that does it for City Life. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch us on Durham Television Network and on YouTube. I'm Beverly Thompson. Thank you for joining me to learn more about City Life in Durham.